Similar to all sorts of different modelings, it is essentially a probability. I don't think anything in this world can give you anything of certainty. I think what climate modeling does is it has a great power to tell you with a certain probability what is likely to happen based on what we've seen in history. Climate models can predict things like even be moving to spheres of, for example, predicting how like different sorts of climates and heat waves is giving rise to certain diseases and stuff to then help certain governments even prepare better resources to meet the potential demand for these things. There's huge use cases and learnings that are already being done. Do they get it wrong at times? Yes, they do. It's not 100%.
Welcome to Brave. Learn from Southeast Asia's best tech leaders. Build the future, learn from our past, and stay human in between. No BS on success. I'm Jeremy Au, venture capitalist, serial founder, Harvard MBA, science fiction nerd, and dad of 2 daughters. Every week, we debate startup news, interview changemakers, answer listener questions, and share personal insights. Join our movement of over 40,000 members and get transcripts, resources, and community at www.bravesea.com. Stay well and stay brave. Hey, Johann, how are you?
Hey, Jeremy, I'm doing well.
Well, good to see you and have you on the show. So, tell us about yourself.
Thanks so much. Just a quick introduction. My name is Johann. I'm a co-founder of Nika.eco. We are a early stage climate tech that is really focused on building software infrastructure to make climate and geospatial modeling more affordable and accessible.
Yeah, amazing. So can you tell us about what you were like as a university student?
So in university, that was actually where I got into my first foray of entrepreneurship. I really enjoyed the space of climate and sustainability. I actually founded a sustainable apparel company to pay for my university bills. It didn't do so well initially on the B2C side, so pivoted to B2B to help corporates procure their more sustainable-based apparel. It was really great. I enjoyed it through my university years. It helped me pay for my university fees, helped me pay for my dates, and that same woman I went on dates with and my sustainable apparel company managed to pay for is now my wife. So really, really enjoyed my university days running that startup.
So I think what's interesting is that you did a lot of that. Did you always want to be a founder at that point of time in university? Or did you say like, hey, I want to, I don't know, be in big tech, for example?
Actually, my initial dream was really to actually be more in big tech. That was why I geared everything towards wanting to work at Amazon. Specifically, I also really wanted to work at Amazon. When I was growing up, I really loved reading the books by Jeff Bezos. I love understanding kind of his thinking about business and how he managed to scale Amazon. Amazon was my dream company. And that was a big tech. That was always what I was gearing for. Becoming a founder, even at the university days, was actually, as I mentioned, purely out of necessity to pay for higher end dates to attract my now wife. So that was a bit more of the goal. But later on, I started to fall in love with it. Really enjoyed the process of challenging myself, building new things. It slowly grew, but it wasn't, I wanted to be a founder out of the gate type of thing.
So let's talk about those 2 different experiences. First of all, what was it like being the founder of MBF at the university days? What was it like to be doing that?
Oh my goodness, it was absolutely chaotic. The apparel business is really tough, especially on a B2C level. When we first started, we got really lucky. We came out with an MVP product on a newer type of fabric that was a lot more sustainably sourced, had some sort of properties to really make just make it a little bit more sustainable in its active use. We managed to randomly get picked up by kind of a Straits Times article. So that's where the B2C segment really started to fly off. This was in my early second year of uni. Got really lucky there and started to make quite a good sum of money. Usually for apparels, you need to actually meet something called an MOQ requirement, which is a minimum order, and it can be quite tough to hit. So one of the tricks there is to kind of like make small products, get people to test it. Once you hit the MOQ kind of quantity, you can ramp up production. Judging that is very difficult. That's how we managed to start.
And what was your learnings from this experience? What did you learn from that?
I think in university, I really learned, I guess, the kind of entrepreneur, like you almost have to love the kind of the grind to keep trying. Even though we had the initial pop in sales for the B2C segment, the real tough part happened was actually when COVID kind of hit, right? So we were starting to get our traction and our momentum going up on the B2C side, and I was really happy. And then that's when really circuit breaker kind of hit. We had quite a few cancel orders because I think everyone wanted to be in their pajamas. They didn't really want to buy outside clothes, and then our clothes, obviously, because it was more sustainable, was a little bit more pricey. So at that time in kind of circuit breaker, everybody was struggling. So the real struggle was we had an MOQ, we over ordered a little bit, got a little bit excited. So we had kind of all this excess inventory, and I didn't have the money to pay for that. So really had to borrow from some friends and family to kind of make sure we can even hit the MOQ. And then after I hit the MOQ, I had lots of supply that I didn't know what to do with. So that's always a huge challenge and struggle, right? So I learned how to deal with that and we had to innovate out of this huge problem, right? What we managed to do was hit the MOQ for the fabrics. We brought the fabrics in, but didn't finish all the clothes. My friends and I kind of had this idea where we took the excess fabric that we had. We started to go knock on doors around businesses and try and go like, hey, like, would you guys have a use case for this? And that's how we managed to pivot to the more B2B side, which was the much larger portion of the business later.
Wait, so how does pivot? So you had a product, I guess, literally you had a product. So
We literally had a product.
But then you didn't know who was going to buy as a customer, right? So how did you find the right customer?
We really knocked on doors. I kid you not, this was me like really trying to like, I LinkedIn messaged people, I like cold emailed people. I really went to knock on doors and managed to find a couple of people that really believed in what we were doing and the sustainability movement. These typically tended to be more corporates that actually had sustainability mandates and agendas. So I started to target those. They were Western companies that were headquartered in Singapore, had these sustainability mandates for sustainability certificates, and we already kind of had the supply chain for that. I targeted all those companies and went like, hey, we already have these certified things that meet your requirement, right? You want some corporate clothing, I can let you have it for really affordable. Starting, hopefully you come with us for a longer term. And that's what happened.
I'm glad it worked out. I mean, it sounds super scary because wait, so you're all this like,
scary.
Because you're friends and family money, but literally
I know, I loaned it,
Yeah, but like how much material was that? Like, did they fill up a room or how much?
So the way clothing works is that there's kind of like two main parts to it. So there's like procuring the fabric and then the cutting and placing of the clothes together. Usually there's kind of two different, especially when you want to go the more sustainable route, they usually can't be from the same person. People who are very good at cutting may not have access to sustainable fabrics, but we managed to negotiate our way out of it. We had to hit the MOQ for the fabrics, but then we didn't want to hit the MOQ for the cutting and stuff. So we just did whatever orders we had to fulfill. We had a little bit extra and then we got the fabric to save costs on the cutting side. So that's what we did. We brought it all to Singapore and I had to find another use case for the fabric.
Wow, it sounds so scary. You walk in, you're like, I convert my family's money into cloth.
I had no choice. Like I said, this is the challenges of being an entrepreneur and just trying to figure it out.
If you convert it into food, at least you have eaten it.
I really, really wish.
How long did it take for you to find this right customer? Was it like 1 month, 2 months? How did you feel during the search?
Oh, it was really tough. It was during COVID. So I guess we were quite fortunate. There was a little bit of extra time. School sometimes moved to Zoom. So had more time to work after hours. To find our first customer, it took about 2 to 3 months where we really just grinded every day. And my honest agenda back then was to make up the loss that I had. Hopefully just try and find a use case because you know, in the end, I still did care quite about climate and sustainability. So I just didn't want the fabrics to like go to waste. It's like 10 rolls of big fabric sitting in my college dorm room, you know, and taking up a lot of space. So yeah, that's pretty much just us figuring out a great use case for it that managed to build products that people enjoy.
So there you are. You successfully find out that new customer and you said that you paid off for your dates with your now wife. So how did you feel? Was like, did you feel like relief or was it like a high roller?
I wouldn't really define it even as a startup. I would say it's more of a small business, right? Our goal was to be profitable. We were mostly looking to pay off, like I mentioned, our university expenses and a bit of extra cash. That was really what I think we started to have a goal towards. It felt great to have a bit of spare cash. I was able to take my then girlfriend, now wife, to some cooler dates. Like it's kind of a Singaporean thing where you always dreamed of going on the cable car kind of thing from Sentosa. Then that one's like $100 per person type of thing. And yeah, being able to splash a bit of cash on that in university days felt great. Really enjoyed it. So I mean, obviously she's now my wife, so I guess it worked.
So you built this company, and then what's interesting is that you also had this dream to go to Amazon, which you eventually did. What was that decision-making process where you were like, okay, I'm going to apply for a job at Amazon versus doubling down on your small business?
Yeah, I actually saw it as, even though I am Singaporean, I always thought that the Singaporean education system was a bit too rigid for me. That's obviously why I chose to go to Yale-NUS. So that was my university of choice. It was a lot more liberal and American, and I guess a lot more open-ended in the way you could learn things. From that type of thinking, I saw entrepreneurship as a really important part of my university education. Obviously, I worked a lot on the business, so it was a really important part of my education as a whole. I managed to create a very compelling story for that, right? So I think to get into Amazon is incredibly competitive. That was always my dream. So I always knew that I think usually for these type of companies and even selective schools, you got to really, I guess similar to startup, right? Differentiate yourself. You have to be very different from the crowd, right? So I also thought that this entrepreneurship experience was a stepping stone, having those newspaper articles written about a little bit about a story, and then obviously my bit more experience in dealing with a small apparel business was quite compelling to Amazon as a story. And I also read a lot about Amazon's culture, so I understood what they were looking for. I didn't succeed the first time I tried for Amazon. So I actually tried to apply at Amazon my freshman year, my sophomore year, and I only got in my third year. So I actually failed 2 times. So that allowed me to really learn from those experiences. And then, yeah, I was able to actually turn even my MBF story and my MBF experiences into a compelling narrative and research the roles that I felt really fit that narrative. And that's actually where I started becoming on the Amazon startup team, really servicing different sorts of startups that wanted to use AWS. That was a large part of my role at Amazon, finding ways for that. And that's the first time I met you, Jeremy. I don't know whether you remember. We met at an Amazon event. I worked together with Adriel, and we sponsored one of the events. I remember that's the first time we met and connected and just really enjoyed those conversations we had.
Yeah, I actually do remember that. So obviously I was putting together one of our Brave community events for founders and
Right.
education tech. And I think it was a fun time.
Right.
I remember we were
Yeah.
chatting over food and you shared your dream about doing something in climate tech.
And that was where, it was the starting, that was
Yeah.
the birth. I think you remember it.
Yeah, I think the crux of it was I was impressed that you wanted to do climate tech. And also, I was unclear how you would go about doing climate tech from Singapore. I think there's a lot of good sustainability solutions in Southeast Asia. Like for example, there's Rico system that does plastic recycling in Indonesia. There's Iratani that does rice farming support in Indonesia as well. So I think there's a lot of agri-tech or other kind of sustainability solutions in the emerging markets. But from Singapore, it was like
Right.
what the right place to create climate tech was a bit fuzzy. But you made it happen and you became a startup founder, and we've decided to invest in you as well. Tell a little bit more about how you kind of okay, first of all, you were Amazon, you hated Amazon, or you were like, I want to do something? Like, what's going on here first?
Don't get me wrong, I absolutely loved Amazon. I still am very close to my previous boss. And once again, they was a startup team, right? So obviously they understood. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed I really loved Amazon, every bit of it. I loved my team. It was more just I think that, I don't know, it was weird. The person that convinced me to make that jump was actually my other co-founder, Lawrence. He was my best friend at Amazon. So we were actually interns together at Amazon. We got converted together at Amazon, and he became one of my groomsmen at my wedding as well. So we were basically best friends. He left Amazon first, so I have to give him all the credit. We've been talking about this climate modeling thing, and then he came up to me one day and was like, bro, I'm leaving Amazon. And I was like, oh, you're crazy, bro. I kind of just got here. I'm just getting started. So yeah, it was really him that convinced me, because he left first. He's always wanted me to join, but he had a period where he wanted to try things on his own. Later, we reconciled and joined together. It wasn't a natural transition. It was really I think a natural progression of him kind of continue to tell me about all the cool stuff happening in climate modeling and geospatial side and the prospects. The real thing that tipped me over the iceberg was him showing me a video, I remember, of actually Jeff Bezos, when Jeff Bezos was a very young entrepreneur. And Jeff said something, which was that the reason why I started Amazon wasn't because I was scared of my job. He was actually a very popular banking finance person and making good money. But he said if he didn't do Amazon, he worried he would regret it later. That led to my thinking, where I really thought to myself, if I didn't try this, would I really regret later? Even if it didn't work out, right? Would I really regret later? And I felt like I would have. So that's pretty much why I did. I just really didn't want to regret things, and I felt that I really enjoyed the big tech. I really kind of I achieved a lot of the goal that I wanted, and I just didn't want to regret an exciting opportunity to challenge myself again. So that's actually why I made that decision in the end.
And how did you land on the idea of doing climate modeling? So obviously climate tech is a passion that you had.
Yeah, I think, like I said, you've been hearing this. This goes into kind of that, not everything for me happened all at once. It was really a natural progression of lots of variables coming together. The main thing was actually my family is a Christian, and my father used to be a part-time missionary growing up. And a big part of kind of my dad's work was actually working to support the indigenous farmers in the mountains of Chiang Mai in Thailand. I think growing up, the main thing I kept seeing here is that farmers really, really continually needed to keep deforesting lands, keep slash and burning, because they needed to keep their yields high. And to keep their yields high, they had to do more monoculture crops like corn that were a lot less sustainable. So really my passion for climate tech and climate modeling stemmed from that. My skill sets are more in tech and software. So really I think trying to find an angle for that. Obviously, I'm not kind of a hard tech guy. There's lots of all those cool climate techs as well. Really trying to find a great angle for that from a software angle. That was always what I was very passionate about, trying to solve, right? When Lawrence first left Amazon, our clarity on what we were going to build was not super, super clear. But it came clearer over time that there's a huge growing movement. I think this will only grow bigger over time for what we're going to call this general topic of, I would say, spatial analytics, which is using spatial data points to understand what's happening in the world and the environment around us. And I just realized that as we continue to validate and try new things, a lot of the infrastructure that people was using to set up those machine learning environments and building those models was just chaotic. And for something as important as climate, we really wanted to build a powerful solution to help everyone set up their modeling in a lot more accessible and easier manner.
When you think about that, what's wrong with climate modeling anyway? I mean, who even uses climate modeling? What's wrong with it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Climate modeling is similar to AI. For example, a large language model is simply predicting with super accurate precision what the most likely next word to be, right? So climate modeling is the same thing. It's understanding and trying to predict what's going to happen to our climate in the future using a lot of historical data points, right? So the main issue that we saw is that lots of climate modeling now is really reserved for very, very, I would say, high-end corporations and institutions because they can actually spend a lot of that money to invest in heavy virtual machines and cloud computing resources in order to really build some of those best models, right? But what we were really seeing was that there were lots of other institutions, there were consultants, there were smaller universities and researchers that also wanted to have those capabilities, right? But they were struggling to optimize their computing environments. So that was one of the largest things that we saw. There's a huge potential cost barrier and efficiency barrier for larger companies that could create customized solutions. So that's where we really see the opportunity. We want to provide a one-click kind of, you can spin up a virtual machine that's essentially optimized for these sorts of climate modeling to help anyone to be able to model out and have an optimized architecture to really model out these sorts of climate and spatial situations at a much more affordable cost than what they traditionally use. So that's really what we are trying to gear towards and the problem we're trying to solve.
Are you trying to be better? Are you trying to be faster? Are you trying to be cheaper from your perspective?
I would define it more as accessibility, right? Anyone can do it, but spatial and climate modeling has a different computing language, right? That computing language to actually set up the appropriate software packages within your environment, sometimes if it gets very complex, can even take up to 3 days, right? To actually set it up, update all the packages correctly. And that's a very, very manual process, right? So what we've essentially done is that we want to make the scaling part automatic and also the part to set up the environment entirely automatic. They just literally kind of choose the main stuff that they want, click one button, boom, everything is set up instantly, and they can start to build their models straight away.
What's the upside of letting more people do this, right? I mean, if you tell me, hey, more people know how to, I don't know, plant trees, then I'll be like, okay, that helps the world. What's the upside from helping more people be able to access modeling?
I think the beauty of climate modeling is in spatial analytics. More and more people will need to use spatial analytics. It's very, very similarly to how machine learning is supporting so many businesses in making a lot better decisions, right? The way that we see it is spatial modelings help makes better decisions that then help increase ROI effectively, right? If you actually understand now the use cases that we are starting to see in spatial analytics, let me give you one example, right? Spatial analytics and climate is having huge use cases in insurance businesses, right? Insurance businesses are increasingly turning to climate and spatial modeling to help them price their insurance premiums. This is critical for them to know how to price their premiums based on certain risk factors, now having to include climate, considering how climate is becoming such a huge risk factors with all the floods and all the kind of unpredictable rainforests coming on, is going to be business critical for insurance companies to really understand how to price their premiums and how to price their products. These are important decision-making tools to help make better decisions over time.
From your perspective, do you believe the world is doomed? A lot of people are pretty pessimistic, right? About the climate, the world's going to end. I shouldn't have kids because it's adding more burden to the world, right? Because the world is so ecologically stressed already. What are your thoughts about that?
That's an interesting conversation I have with my wife a lot. For context, my wife is also from Yale-NUS and one of the co-founders of Thrift.sg, the largest secondhand online bookstore in Southeast Asia. We are both very into climate and sustainability use cases and business. We have that conversation all the time, especially as we think about kids and stuff all the time, right? I think that we are on the side where we are a little bit more, we're a little bit more optimistic. You can call us a bit more delusional, I'd say. But we are optimistic that, I guess, just looking throughout history, I also love to read history. I guess we've seen humans be able to continually adapt to their environment using newer technologies, using newer tools, depending on the use cases. So I'll say that definitely I'm optimistic that we can find solutions, but whether or not I'm right, that one I'm not sure. But do I want to potentially give a large part of my efforts trying to make a little bit of a difference? That I'm interested in trying.
As we think about all of this kind of like climate modeling, how do you think about the dynamics of what climate models can capture versus what they can't capture from your perspective?
That's a really good question. I would say similar to all sorts of different modelings, it is essentially a probability. I don't think anything in this world can give you anything of certainty. If not, it'll be, I guess we'll all be making the right decisions all the time. I really think it's all about probability. So I think what climate modeling does is it has a great power to tell you with a certain probability what is likely to happen based on what we've seen in history. Obviously, with things like COVID, it is incredibly hard to predict these very abnormal events. What we are seeing is that climate models can predict things like, even been moving to spheres of, for example, predicting how like different sorts of climates and heat waves or whatnot is giving rise to certain diseases and stuff, to then help certain governments even prepare better resources or whatnot to meet the potential demand. Some of this research has actually already being used by certain governments, right? So I definitely say that there's huge use cases and learnings. Do they get it wrong at times? Yes, it's not 100%.
On that note, could you share about a time that you personally have been brave?
Yeah, I'll say that the time I really had been brave was when I took that huge step to leave my comfort zone of corporate life and start a climate tech in Southeast Asia. I applaud anybody who's trying to do it. It is incredibly difficult. Still, my huge dream is for Southeast Asia to embrace more climate-focused solutions. Currently, most of our customers are overseas, so we have yet to make that change, but I'm excited to be brave in Southeast Asia to try and build climate solutions for this region and hopefully the world.
Yeah. I think the interesting part is that you're choosing to do something that's hard. Obviously, there are other companies like Unravel Carbon, Grace Sai, she's also part of Climate Tech. She's been a prior guest of Brave as well. But I was just kind of curious from your perspective. You have done so many different industries, right? You've gone into oil and gas, you have gone into banking. Why is climate tech such an important thing for you for so many years? Why is this cause important?
I think it really goes back to my childhood, hearing the pain of people suffering from the effects of our capitalistic mindset and how it's harmed certain areas. And then the effects of how climate has harmed certain people, right? Like, for example, I had very close interactions and know quite a lot of the farmers, like I mentioned, that in those Thailand regions that are still really struggling quite a bit, right? And I guess it drove a huge thought in me to continually just keep pondering and thinking about, is there a way we could make some of this better? Finally managed to find a way from a software angle, which is a little bit more what I specialized in from a climate modeling perspective.
Yeah. On that note, thank you so much for sharing. I'd like to summarize the 3 big takeaways I got from this conversation. First of all, thanks so much for sharing about your time as a founder, as a student, where you had borrowed money and struggled to figure out who's going to buy a literal physical product. And so it was a fun journey to hear about your panic, but also how you managed to pivot and find the right customer and eventually be able to go on dates with your now wife. Secondly, thanks so much for sharing about why you decided to leave Amazon in order to build Nika.eco. I think it was fun to hear about your product market fit, why you think it makes it better for people who want a climate model, but also make it more accessible. Lastly, thanks for sharing about your perspective on climate. It was interesting to hear why you're passionate about climate as a cause from both a personal perspective, but also why you think it's important and the fact that you're optimistic for the future for people to still have kids and bring up their kids in a world where the climate will hopefully get better. On that note, thank you so much, Johann, for sharing your journey.
Thank you, Jeremy, for having me. I really appreciate it. It was so fun.
Thank you for listening to Brave. If you enjoyed this episode, please share the podcast with your friends and colleagues. We would also appreciate you leaving a rating or review. Head over to www.bravesea.com for member content, resources, and community. Stay well and stay brave.